From Washington, D.C. to the heart of America, welcome to Mark Alford's America. I'm freshman Congressman Mark Alford from Missouri, and I believe in America. I believe in you, and most importantly, I believe that our greatest days are still ahead. You know, each week we take you behind the scenes to share the stories, the legislation, the news of the day, but we also get to meet the great folks I work with helping shape our great nation. One of those remarkable individuals is Congressman Greg Pence, who proudly serves Indiana's 6th Congressional District. He had a pretty big career in the private sector, working in the energy distribution sector. Greg Pence was sworn into office on January 3rd of 2019. His journey reflects his deep commitment to service, leadership, and the people of Indiana. Greg's story begins in Columbus, Indiana. He grew up there, later returned to rear his family there, and as a former Marine Corps officer, small businessman, lifelong public servant, he really brings a unique perspective to Congress. His leadership is rooted in Indiana values. We'll get into that. Greg right now serves on the House Energy and Commerce Committee. He tackles some of the biggest issues of our time, including energy security, economic development, and really, he's dedicated to protecting conservative values. We're excited to be in his office today in Cannon Office Building, Congressman Greg Pence. Thank you for letting us in your office. Yeah. The first thing I noticed when I walked in is your popcorn machine. The first office I've seen with a popcorn machine.
Well, that's thanks for having me. Thanks for coming to my office, Mark. Yeah, well, every one of my predecessors has had Hoosier popcorn, and that's what we serve here. Once we start popping it, all my peers come down the hall and get a bag or two.
Indiana definitely known for its popcorn.
Yes.
I want to get the first thing out of the way. You are the brother of Mike Pence. I happen to occupy Mike Pence's freshman office in the neighboring building there. Are you older or younger than Mike?
I'm the oldest of 6. He's number 3. Wow. 4 boys and 2 girls.
And Mike had, before he got into politics, he was a radio host, wasn't he?
He was. He ran for Congress in 88 and 90, lost both times. And then he went and was on the biggest radio station in Indiana for about a decade. And then he got the call. People said, hey, why don't you run for this district that I now serve in? And he did. He served for 12 years, and then he got tapped to run for governor, and then, of course, we know he became vice president. My predecessor, Luke Messer, served for 6 years. When he decided he was going to run for Senate, people said to me, why don't you run for this seat? And I decided, well, okay, I would. And people said, well, you're just running on your brother's name. And I said, yeah, and it's working real good. Okay. So I committed to 6 to 8 years, to kind of dispel the idea that I was just going to do it while he was vice president. And here I am. It's been great.
There had to be a deeper reason, though, why you wanted to run. This is not an easy job.
So, yeah, so true, right? How many hours? 155 nights in some years that we're out here, which means about half the year you're out in D.C. flying back and forth. I go home every week that I can. I was semi-retired. I've been on seminary boards, chamber boards, community boards, church, all kinds of different boards, had moved on from that. And when this call came to help other people at my age, I'll be 68, just made a lot of sense of another way I could give back and serve, because we are representatives. And as you and I both know, constituent services is everything. So I've actually been able to do what I wanted to do when I heard that call.
There's really, this is really 3 or 4 jobs rolled into one. Of course, you're always running for re-election. We're up every 2 years, again, up this year. You're raising money. That's like a full-time job to pay for the TV ads and radio ads. You're up here dealing with the legislation, your committee work. But I think the biggest, I don't know about you, but the biggest, most rewarding part for me is when I'm back in the district, and even when our staff is there helping people, because the federal agencies are not doing their job in helping constituents who are owed money, who are owed services. It's disgusting to me that the attitude of these agencies up here don't treat our constituents like clients.
Well, of course, and the buildings are 30% occupied, so they're not even in work, and what a shame. Yeah, we do so much of that. On a typical year, we'll be contacted 30,000 times. Not all require a response. Not all we have to follow up on. But, yeah, the number of inquiries we get. And, every time I do radio at home, I focus on call us if you have problems with Social Security, veterans, all these different things, IRS. And I'm always surprised that our constituents don't know that we're here to help and we can light a fire under the agencies here in Washington, D.C.
And it's amazing. It takes one call from our office to these agencies, and they move that problem from the bottom of the stack to the top of the stack. And people don't realize, well, it's a shame it has to be that way.
It is.
But our offices, every congressional member's office can really help people with their federal issues.
They can, and you and I have both seen it many times.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your background. You grew up in the energy sector. How did you get involved with that?
Family was in it. We were in gas stations and bulk plants. This goes way back, and petroleum trucking. So I grew up in that. Joined the Marine Corps, got a undergraduate and graduate degree, philosophy and theology undergraduate, finance MBA. And then I went into the oil industry, went and worked for a couple major oil companies, then came back to Indiana and worked in the distribution business. And then my last job in that was the National Director of Fuels for Circle K, which is the second largest convenience store chain in the world. And then one day I actually built my own real estate company and finally retired from the oil industry. Then here I am, and this is my.
I'm a former realtor as well. I don't know if you knew that. I started a real estate caucus here. Bill, if you're not in it, we need you in it.
I'll be darned.
There's a lot of things. There's a federal jury in Kansas City that I think made the wrong decision last year on buyer's agencies agreement. That's going to be a whole nother segment we'll do, but we need you in the real estate caucus. All right. Back to energy. This current administration, before they even got into office, signaled that they were going to have a war on fossil fuel. I grew up in Baytown, Texas, home of Humble Oil and Refining Company that started in 1913, now Exxon. My family was in the refinery, worked in refineries and things like that. But how much damage has President Biden and this administration done to our economy and to our farmers and producers, which I know you and I are both concerned with in our states, big ag states? How much damage have they done to America because of their war on fossil fuels?
Well, we can't even calculate it yet. I will say when the electrification of the transportation industry first started, they didn't know what they wanted, but they knew when they wanted it done by 2030, 2035. I think the administration and my peers on the other side of the aisle in Congress understand that we can't get where they wanted to go by then. But in the meantime, Mark, they've wasted enormous sums of money in grants, funding companies that have since closed up and gone bankrupt. The whole EV automobile industry, we've had some companies go broke, although they got in the business with federal funds from the Inflation Reduction Act and other grants. And the amount of money that has been wasted in pursuing something that was not well thought out, we just won't be able to calculate because there's no accountability in this.
Well, in fact, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is really the Inflation Expansion Act, it did nothing to lower inflation. Encapsulated in that, I did not vote on that. I think you did. You were here. Was the Green New Scam, as President Trump calls it. A scam on and now Biden has admitted that it had very little to do with inflation reduction and more to get this Green New Scam through and the money out there to promulgate and promote this false idea that the climate cult in America is trying to pull over on the American people.
Right. And you know, this is almost going to be bipartisan to you, but we had an awful lot of large major corporations that were behind that as well. Okay, the automobile industry, I'll pick on them. They wanted to get into the EV business, and they wanted another bailout, and they wanted more government money, because I'd like to ask this question to people. How many cars do they sell in the United States? I'll answer my own question for you. Automobiles, 16 million cars every year. How many automobiles do they sell in Europe every year? 8 million. How many cars do they sell in China every year, which is going 100% electric? 28 million. So our automobile industry went to the U.S. government and said, hey, we've got a whole market here, larger than ours and Europe combined, and we need help getting into the electrification industry. Here's what the fallacy of that, and here's where the Biden administration said, okay, we're going to bail you out because they want to be socialist country, right? They gave them the money necessary to convert their own plants, but there's no demand there here in the United States. They tried to create demand here in the U.S. by forcing supply, and that's failed. So the carbon industry is coming back. They can't get around it. I think you're going to see a lot more hybrids out of the automobile manufacturers, and there's egg on the face of this administration for bailing out the auto industry one more time.
Well, and I talk to local auto dealers, friends of mine in our district, in our listening area, and they tell me the manufacturers are trying to force on them to carry these EVs on their floor plan and pay this interest on this floor plan, and they can't sell them. People do not want to drive a golf cart to work. Now, I wouldn't mind having one to run around town, maybe, but don't force it on.
I'm not against EVs at all, but you can't force demand by creating supply, forcing supply. You can't do that, and that's happened. And the car dealerships are having trouble, but there's another element of that, and I'm getting into probably things that are more than people consider. The automobile manufacturers like to have the Tesla model where they don't have car dealerships anymore. You just go and exchange your battery, or you don't get your car fixed like you do with conventional auto.
Yeah. We're talking with Greg Pence, congressman from Indiana. We have lots more to talk about here on Mark Offers America. I want to get into the debate that happened this week, where we are headed. Yeah, there was a debate this week. I want to talk about the upcoming presidential election. Are we going to hang on to the majority in the House? I certainly hope so. Where are we headed as a nation? We're talking with a great patriot, Greg Pence from Indiana. You're listening to Mark Offers America. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Mark Offers America, where we give you a behind-the-scenes look each week in Washington, D.C., sometimes in the district, introducing you to some of the great folks we work with. Today, we're talking with Congressman Greg Pence of Indiana, a proud Marine officer, businessman, and an advocate for Indiana's 6th Congressional District. Greg, you were in the Marines. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Thank you for your service, by the way. You were actually in Beirut, Lebanon. Tell me about that experience.
I was. Thanks, Mark. I've done a lot since I've been in Congress, trying to remember 41 years ago, October 23rd of this year. Last year was 40th. We went to Camp Lejeune and did a commemorative memorial with secretaries of the Navy and the Commandant of the Marine Corps and some other dignitaries, folks that had been there. I was a liaison officer between two battalions. I spent time there. By the grace of God, I got to leave a few days before they came and drove a truck in and blew up the barracks, which was a Hilton. That was biggest,
44 years ago?
41.
Wow.
That was the largest loss of Marine lives behind Iwo Jima since then. And while yesterday we had a Congressional Gold Medal for the 13 servicemen that lost their lives in Afghanistan, I'm going to continue to fight for the 280 Marines that lost their lives on that day.
How so?
Beirut.
What do you?
I'd like a commemorative day, a remembrance day, to be put in the congressional.
Why has that not happened before?
It's a little bit of a heavy lift. They only do so many of those, but I've got a lot of support and have had a lot of support. I had an URA bill, so the Marines out there know what that is, and that went after Iran. It froze $6 billion of their dollars over in Europe, and we tried to shut down Hezbollah and Hamas, and here they are again. Yeah. 41 years later, it's the same characters doing the same thing. Iran funding Hezbollah and Hamas vis-a-vis Lebanon.
Well, it doesn't help when President Biden frees up $16.5 billion.
That does not help. Right.
When you look, I know this guy's our president. We respect the office of the presidency, but when you saw those families yesterday in the rotunda, these 13 Gold Star families and 13 service members, many of them Marines, one of them from from Missouri, Lance Corporal Schmitz in the Marine Corps. When this president abandoned Afghanistan the way he did and left 13 service members there to die, and then he's checking his watch, see what time it is when their bodies come home, what goes through your mind?
He's tone deaf, never served, has no idea, is insensitive, but we did the right thing here in the House. Speaker Johnson did the right thing yesterday, and all of the other leadership showed up, and we remembered those, and we just need to keep remembering so it doesn't happen again.
For the first time, they got an apology. It was not from Kamala Harris.
Right.
It was not from Joe Biden. It was from Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House.
Right.
What do you think that meant to the families to get that apology?
Well, we were both there watching their tears, knowing that was going to help them put this loss behind, help them put the loss of their loved ones behind them and be remembered, and it was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Of course, in the debate on...
was there a debate?
There was.
When was that?
This earlier this week. I don't know if you saw it, but Kamala Harris, they asked her, did you support the president's decision on Afghanistan? And she had said previously that she was the last person in the room trying to give herself some credibility that she actually had a voice in this decision. And maybe she did or maybe she didn't, but she did not admit to any mistakes in that flawed decision to pull out and go against Trump's proposal, his pullout. He wanted to leave 2,500 troops there. He did not want to leave billions of dollars worth of equipment there. It was going to be totally different. But Joe Biden was insistent on a zero occupation force, as they called it, from the U.S. government to get just leave on the anniversary of 9/11, be out before then. What do you make of Kamala Harris?
Well, having had a brother who was vice president of the United States, I'm not real sure that she certainly has to continue to support her president as she serves as vice president as best she can. And so it's not I'm giving her a pass on her statement, because I'm not giving a pass on the administration for what they did, but her saying that she supported what the president did I think that's fairly political and fairly standard.
How consequential is this upcoming presidential election? And for that matter, the House elections all over the country and the Senate, those are up for Senate re-election.
Well,
how important is it?
The only way we're going to turn this around, I believe, is make sure that we hold the House, regardless of what happens in the White House, and win, which there's a higher probability of winning the Senate. We can't, you and I, in the House where we sit right now, can't lose sight of the fact that we need to hold or grow the House of Representatives. And that's our job. Our job is not to get the Senate elected, the House elected, and a governor in Indiana or Missouri elected. We need to focus on our job, our peers, our party here at our conference.
Greg Pence, what do you love about America?
Oh, the people, right? I'd even put Indiana at the top of that list, right? Because you got some other
Missouri
affiliation,
my list,
right?
Yeah.
No, it's great people. I have actually lived in a number of different places in the world, and nobody's better than us. No economy is better. Our values, maybe not New York. I won't pick on New York, but certainly we care about other people. Every community has organizations helping other people to feed them, to house them, to clothe them, to care for them. I don't think you find that to the extent as you do in the rest of the world.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. Thank you, folks, for listening to Mark Alford's America. We'll talk again next week. Until then, remember, I believe in you. I believe that our best days are still ahead of us. And Greg Pence, I believe in America.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.